drivers behind the line.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Season 3 of Behind the Lines, where we bring the experts to you. I'm Francis O'Rourke from GameSense. Hosting with me tonight is Evan Morrison. And this week, we'll be discussing First Choice and the virtual kit. Tonight, we're going to have a presentation on the topic. That'll take about 30 minutes. And then after that, we'll have about 30 minutes of question and answer from everybody out there watching on the internet live tonight.
Before we hand it off to our experts, we do need to mention that the views expressed on Behind the Lines by hosts and guests are those of the individual and do not necessarily reflect the views of First or First participants.
Absolutely. So don't forget, like I said about those questions, if you want to submit them to us, you can submit them to us by tweeting at FRC GameSense with the hashtag FRCBTL, or you can type !Q into the Twitch chat, and then !Q, then your question, and then the question will come to our chat bot and we'll get it automatically. After you send in your questions, if we like them, we'll ask them to our group of esteemed guests here on air for them to answer.
With that, we're really excited to have some of the foremost experts on the subject with us tonight. We will let them introduce themselves. Jerry, you first.
Hi, I'm Jerry Budd. I work at AndyMark, and I'm one of the guys behind First Choice.
Hi, I'm Liz Smith. I also work at AndyMark, and I help with a lot of the virtual kit product donation vouchers things.
Hi, I'm Kate, Kate Pilotte, and I work for First, and I work with the Kit of Parts team.
All right. Well, hey, guys, thank you so much for being on the show tonight. It's great to have you here talking about something that may not be the hottest topic on everybody's mind, but it will become about a month or so when kickoff happens. The kit of parts, the virtual kit of parts, and First Choice. So with that, let's get everything started, and let's take it away with the presentation. So I believe we're going to start off with Kate here.
Yeah, so just to give an overview of the kit of parts, people who have been around for a while probably remember the kit of parts as a tote or a pair of totes that you get at kickoff, which is kind of the legacy thing that people think of. But over the last decade or so, it's evolved to really be a system of how we get parts from suppliers out to teams. And it's become a system because the model of getting everything to everybody every year wasn't particularly sustainable. And so as our number of teams grew, which is a great problem to have, we needed to find other ways to include donors, to work with suppliers who may not be able to have the resources to support 3,400 teams. And find a way to make sure that they were able to help teams as much as they could, and that we could make sure that those donations, those products were distributed as fairly as possible. And so really the kit of parts is a system that includes kind of these three primary ways to get things out to the teams. So we have the kickoff kit, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's the tote of things that go out to teams for receipt at kickoff. The virtual kit, which is primarily thought of as those vouchers, but you're right, it's donated by more other things that are donated by suppliers. So whether it's free software downloads, vouchers for free parts, dollar vouchers for use on a site, it's basically anything that a donor wants to donate to teams, but isn't actually shipping to First for redistribution. So it's basically them saying, go ahead and introduce us to teams and we'll send them free stuff when they get in touch with us. And then the third part, First Choice, which is that online repository of parts that were donated by suppliers. AndyMark has hosted that for First for years now. 4, 5? 5?
11, 5?
11? 11-7 years.
Somewhere in there. You can tell we're all engineers here.
Where we issue credits to teams, and teams can use those credits to pick and choose what they want to kind of add on to their kickoff kit, if you will. And so AndyMark does that as a donation to First. That the website, the taking the orders, the hosting the inventory, the pick, pack, all of that is a service that Andy Mark donates in kind, which is a huge service and something that personally I'm very grateful, but for professionally and on behalf of First, I'm really grateful for that. So that's kind of the overarching system and ways that we try to get parts out to teams.
Cool. So Liz, do you want to talk to us a little bit more about what is First Choice and all that kind of stuff?
Sure. So First Choice, like Kate was explaining, is hosted by Andy Mark. So we do a lot of work here at Andy Mark, doing all the back end work for First Choice. And the primary purpose of First Choice is so that suppliers who maybe can't donate parts in the quantities that are needed to fulfill every team's kit, they can still donate parts and we can get them into the hands of teams that will use them. So I know when I was on the team, I remember maybe getting a bunch of parts that I may or may not have used, but I really like First Choice in that it really provides my team at least the opportunity to choose what parts are useful for us, and it's really improved the way that those parts are distributed out to teams. So Andy Mark has worked for the last few years in making sure that this kind of complicated system works out. So I know for some of the newer teams, the First Choice process, and we can go over the next slide, well, the First Choice process may be a little cumbersome and complicated, but I took this quote directly from the blog, which does a great job explaining exactly what the process is, but for what it lacks in simplicity, it makes up in user experience and satisfaction. So Andy Mark, and especially Jerry and the efforts of his team here at Andy Mark, have really taken a lot of team feedback and incorporated that into the process for First Choice. And we're trying to make this a process that the teams can really get a fair shot at what parts they're getting and are able to use as many credits as they can to parts that they actually think are going to be useful for them. So Andy Mark works really closely with First to make sure that that's happening and that we're incorporating feedback from teams and making sure we improve the process from year to year. So with that, kind of the process is really incorporated into a lot of deadlines for teams. So on the next slide, if you're looking at First Choice, we break First Choice down into 2 rounds. So right now, on November 21st, the round 1 began. So that was the beginning of round 1. So teams right now are in the process of making priority lists. If you're a team, make sure you're going to your mentors and making sure that you're logging in and putting together a priority list to indicate which parts you'd like to have for your team. And we will be accepting round 1 priority lists up until the 6th of December. So that is very soon. That's next week. So make sure you're getting your priority lists in before the deadline. I know my team was working on that last night. So
that's next Tuesday for everybody. And if you're watching this live or hopefully before next Tuesday, and the deadline is noon Eastern time. It's not midnight. So make sure that you have it in preferably on Monday so that if something happens that morning, you don't get left out.
Yeah, and it's I think we'll go over some tips later, but we really you can start making your list now. If you forget to finish it, you at least have something on your priority list ready to go for when that list is due. And that's 12 Eastern time. That's not Australian time. That's not Pacific time. That's East Coast. Think of where Manchester, New Hampshire is. That time zone. So once all the priority lists for teams are submitted and come in, between the 6th and the 8th is when us here at Andy Mark are going to be taking those lists and randomizing them and going through this this process for allocating parts out to teams. And I know Jerry's going to go into a little bit more detail later on about exactly how that process works. So then we will let teams know what parts they received in round 1. There's a session after that for traditional ordering. So just like a regular site for ordering parts, you can actually use your credits to purchase and receive additional parts on first choice. And then round 1 will close on January 6th. That's right before kickoff, in order to prepare for round 2. And if you go on to round 2, you'll notice there is pretty much the same process for round 2. Additional credits will be issued. You'll have another priority list you can submit with the parts that are left over, and Andy Mark will notify in the same way as round 1 of what parts your team will receive for that. So after that, all the parts that are left over after all the priority lists are gone through and the parts are allocated via priority list, the site will be open for our teams to receive any other leftover parts with their credits if they put additional orders in. So that's all the way up through April, right before the championship event.
So real quick, I just want to interject on this. It looks like round 2 is after kickoff. Does that mean that we can expect some spicy stuff to be in first choice at that point?
Well, I think generally we've had additional items in first choice. I know that's usually a surprise during after kickoff as to what parts are going to be available. I, for one, I'm not sure what parts are going to be available after kickoff, but I expect it to be good.
Cool.
Additional credits are going to be there, so expect to. I would definitely keep an eye out for round 2 to see at kickoff what parts are going to be available to teams.
There are, if I can jump in, there are typically 2 things that would kind of launch us into a round 2. And one is if we know that we're not going to get parts in time for round 1, that they're going to be delivered in December, and so they're not going to be in time and we want to have a round 2. Or if we have parts that would give away any aspect of the game, then we'll hold on to those for round 2 as well. So I can tell you we're doing a round 2, whether it's because we're getting parts late or because there's game specifics in there or a combination of both. I won't say, but those are the drivers for a round 2.
Yeah, I mean, as a quick example, last year the boulder balls were in there, and the 775 Pro motors were in there, and both of those were items that weren't in round 1 for exactly those reasons that were just mentioned. One of them was game specific, the other one was not available in time. But I know a lot of teams are really happy to be able to get some of those new motors in round 2, so that's pretty cool.
Cool. Alrighty, and I guess one quick question I have, just to make sure I don't screw up, because I've never been the guy that actually submits the lists. Where do I submit my list?
First choice by AndyMark.com.
Oh, there you go. Sweet. Perfect.
And so anybody can go on to First Choice by AndyMark.com and check out the parts that are available to your team. And mentors, if they log into Tim's, will be able to receive a code to actually log into the website and submit that priority list for your team. So you'd log in as your team and submit that priority list on First Choice by AndyMark.com before the 6th for round 1, and then before January 13th for round 2 for that process.
Cool.
And I'll stress, because this is the number one question we always get right after noon at every single one of the dates. I can't do it anymore today, but today is the final date. It's noon Eastern for every single one of those dates.
Ooh, all right, awesome. That's good to know. Certainly don't want to be late with that kind of stuff.
Yep.
All right, let's go on to our next slide. Talk a little bit about the priority lists. Jared, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So a couple points I kind of want to bring up about these priority lists, and they've worked out really well in the past. We've had some feedback from teams. They kind of prompt us to do this with the Go. There's a lot of people who've tried to help with us. I'd like to give credit to Charles Yoakum, who's actually on Technocats. He's kind of the big programmer behind all of this as far as the website goes, that it kind of oversees the whole process. As far as the whole priority list, if you think of it that there's going to be about 3,400 teams, there won't be probably that many this year, but if we're shooting for 3,400 teams, and let's just go with, let's say there's one item that has 500 in it, some like a motor. Well, if all 500 teams are trying for this motor, or all 3,400 teams are trying for this motor, even if only 500, and they all put this in their first priority pick as at least quantity 1, it's going to run out in just that first round. So when you're making your list, you really want to focus on how many are available and how important these are for teams, or how many teams might also be doing this for round 1. If you put something that has a low quantity all the way in like your 9th priority, by the time we get to that 9th round, or by the time you get to your level on that, it's more than likely been gone for a long time now. So kind of keep that in mind as you're making your list. There's a lot of items that are lower quantity than how many priority lists come in, so it's very likely that you may not get what your first or second priority is. But it's all, as far as how the lists are arranged, they're all randomized. If you want to know the detail behind that, I put all the team numbers in Excel, like even team numbers that don't exist, and I use a random function to come up with a randomize, and I just randomize it like 1,700 times, and that's how I come up with the randomization. So it's Excel. But
well, that works.
Beyond that, the other thing is a lot of teams don't realize this. You can put multiple items on many line items. So if you have something where, like, example today, I was just actually talking to Nick Lawrence at work, and if you had a large fan, you'd like to have a large fan in your kit, and you really want one, you can put it higher on your list. Well, if you still had credits left over after everything else, you could also put it really, really, really low on your list as a second line with a different quantity. So I really, really need 1, but hey, if I got another 2 later on, I could put that as a different or as another quantity of 2 way down the list. And then if I still had credits, great, I get that fan again still. So keep in mind, you can also split up, as long as you don't go above the max quantity per team, because some items are only 1 per team, so that item wouldn't be able to do 2. But if the max quantity was 2, you could do 2 different line items with that 1 item. Some people get this confused, and they end up putting the same part 12 times in a row with quantity 1. That's also, you want to pay attention to that, because each round that it goes through, it takes the next one in priority order, which I'll get a little bit more in detail on this in a second. If you have quantity 1, it's going to try to give you quantity 1. If you have quantity 12, it's going to try to give you quantity 12. So if you got your quantity 1 and that's what you picked, then it says, okay, you got your stuff and I'm going to move on. And the next round you come to is that same item for quantity 1 again. So if you have 12 in a row, you have 12 rounds that you're going to try to get 1. You want to try to, if you have the same item right next to each other, just make it the total quantity of those right next to each other. If you're doing multiple items, make sure they're separated so that you have a few other things in between. Big new feature for the next slide going on is default priority lists. I'm going to jump in, and this is where I'm going to share my screen, kind of show you guys what's going on.
Oh boy.
If I can do this right, because apparently I don't know if I can do this right. Let's show that screen. There we go. All right, so hopefully you can see my screen right now, right? Mm-hmm. Can everybody else see my screen? Cool.
Yep.
So there on the far left, I've already got this page open, but on the far left under categories, there's a brand new one at the very bottom. It's called default priority lists. This is a new feature we put in this year because we've had a lot of rookie teams and a lot of other teams that are just like, I don't know what to pick. We don't do enough of this. Where it's our second year, it's our first year. I just want a bunch of vision parts or a bunch of pneumatics or something like that, and they're really not sure where to even start. Well, we've come up with 5 different generic lists, and it's just a very basic start of how you can add stuff to your list to be able to get started. So I'm not actually logged in as a team, so I won't be able to actually add a list. But if you're looking at that default priority list, there's 5 different sections here. You could click on rookie, and then once you get here, and if you're logged in, you click add to list. it's going to add all those items straight to your list with a couple different quantities for each one of those items. That at least gets you started. You could then, once you get to your priority list, you can sort by just clicking, dragging, and dropping your items up and down for different priorities. You can change your quantities as long as it's below the max team limits, that kind of thing. So it kind of gives you a good starting point to go on with. We're hoping to continue advancing this feature. Part of the problem is we can't really get anybody to give us a good list before we kick off. So we're still working on some things there. Hopefully in the next few years, we'll continue making that better and better as we go.
That's awesome.
The next bullet, sorry. Yeah, so it's great if you don't have time to pick everything one by one, because you can kind of add things in there. So that's under there. The next one is just a link straight to your to those priority lists if you want to go directly to them. And as always, you are able to go log in all the way until noon on December 6th for round 1, and you can change your priority lists all you want. So if you're a mentor, you could set up a list, and then tomorrow you talk to another mentor and they're like, oh, but did you see this? We really want this first. And then you can go back in and you can rechange it again. So not a big deal. You can change it all you want. Another thing I wanted to kind of cover real quick is shipping. We usually have a lot of emails about shipping and when our parts are going to arrive and that kind of stuff as soon as we get done with this. The fun part is we have a whole lot of priority lists that all happen to show up at the exact same time in our shipping system. So, oh, my bad.
Yep, we're just going to switch away from the web page here real quick and go back to the main presentation. There we go.
To the slide.
All right, very good. Continue, Jerry. Sorry about that.
Shipping is the next thing I'm looking at, and a lot of emails we get in is what are we going to ship? When's mine shipping? When's this happening? Well, if you look at the dates, December 8th is when we are sending out the email, or by December 8th, we will send out the emails of what everybody has. We are hoping to start shipping that morning, so we will ship as fast as we possibly can of all these different orders. There is a whole lot of different parts that can happen with a whole lot of different quantities, but there's 154 different parts on this list. So we have a whole area set up at AnyMark just to do the picking and packing of this system. And they come in and we actually have 2 shifts running, so we try to pick and pack as fast as possible with it, trying to keep it accurate. If you guys end up getting something and you weren't supposed to get it, or you didn't get something, by all means, please email firstchoice@anymark.com. I do realize that could be a confusion because the website is firstchoicebyanymark.com. The email address is firstchoice@anymark.com. So be sure you're emailing not the website, but the email. But that's okay. But otherwise, we're hoping to have everything shipped out within a week for every single package. What we usually try to do is start shipping to the furthest away places first, so maybe everybody gets it at the same time. We'll see how good we do this year. We have been making improvements every year to make that better and better.
One comment on this area, Jerry. For the round 2 stuff, if you remember, the deadline for submission was, I think, January 13th, and then sometime around the 20th is when the teams get confirmation. So keep in mind that if you're submitting for items in round 2, that you're probably not going to be receiving them until week 2, week 3 time frame, right? So if you're counting on having those to start building your robot or something, just keep that in mind, that you might want to try and order those items in round 1 or have a backup plan or something.
Yep. Yeah. The goal for round 2 is that we would start shipping somewhere around middle of week 2. We hope to be finished with all the priority lists by middle of week 3 is the goal. So anybody who it'll open for the normal ordering at the very end of week 2. So those orders probably won't go out until the end of week 3 because we've got to get through all the priority lists first. So those will be delayed about a week. Same thing with week 1. Whatever the normal orders are usually delayed a little bit because of all the priority lists still going out. But we're trying to pick and pack those as fast as we possibly can. If I can actually go back and share my screen one more time, I want to just quickly go over the actual flow chart that you
Sure,
can
that'd be cool.
in the log. That is.
Yeah. I gotta say, I do love flowcharts. So.
And I believe Liz mentioned it earlier. That there is a blog post on the FRC blog that talks all about first choice. I believe they also have a link to this flowchart if you want to go check it out. So if flowcharts are your thing, or you're confused about one particular detail, this is great.
Yeah, so real quick, I'll just show you the blog. Here's the original blog. So if you end up finding it, there is a link right under here under priority lists are back. The word here is your link, and that will take you directly to this process. If you're actually looking at your priority lists in first choice, there's also that same link is on the top right in text of how many credits are currently in your priority list, which hopefully is a helpful tool to see. Since you're getting 750 credits in round one, if you see you only have 600 credits, you can always add more. Since we're not even sure if you'll get all the items you have. But this is the simplified, as best as possible, flowchart for how the priority process works. The very top part, start, kind of talks about the registration with round one, round two. The important meat of the part is what I want to get to, which is how once we get to the randomization of the all the orders with the teams, we essentially take that list, and whoever's at the top of the list is ranked, is the number one rank, and we go down the list. So we take that randomized list, and the first thing we do is we say, what is your next top priority item, which for the round one is going to be your very first item. The questions that we come into are, do you have enough credits for that item? Do you have, or at least have enough credits for at least one of that item? Because if you put in 12 of that item and you only had enough credits for 2 of them, we're still going to try to give you 2 of them. We're not going to just say, no, you don't get any of them. So we're going to try to fulfill as many of possible, whether it's quantity available, which is the next question that comes in, or number of credits. So one way or another, we're going to try to get you at least partial number of that line item. If your team doesn't have enough credits, or there's no quantity available whatsoever, it'll actually skip that priority line, and it won't skip your team. We're not just saying, okay, you missed that round. We're actually going to go to your next priority list item and try to do the same thing. So it's going to go through your entire list, and so every round, every single team gets something for that round until it gets through your entire list. If it gets through your entire list and other teams are still going through their list, that means they're still getting stuff, but we've already gone through your list and you have no more credits available, or there's no more quantity of any item you still have on your list. So that's another thing you want to kind of keep in mind. You can add a bunch of stuff to the end of your list of stuff we have a whole lot of if you wanted to. If you wanted that stuff, if you really didn't want that stuff, you don't need to. But it'll keep going through your list so that you get something for that round. It's not just going to skip your team. Once it goes through that entire process from top to bottom in the randomized order it did, it's actually, when it increments the round order, it's now going to go backwards. It's going to go from the last team up to the front. So it's just like a serpentine picking order, what we do for finals in all the FRC events. So 1 to 8, 8 to 1, 1 to 8, 8 to 1. And we just keep doing that until every single list is gone through and everybody doesn't have any more credits, or every item that people want is out of stock. Once all that happens is when we know what our final inventory is. So essentially it checks for the entire inventory of every single item. If not a single item was adjusted, so the entire inventory is exactly the same, it says, okay, nothing changed, so I'm done with this list, and this is all the priority list for this round. It was the fairest thing that we could come up with for the entire process, and it's been working out really well so far. I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen now.
I actually have kind of a weird question.
So, I think that's pretty much all I got for you. Big question. As far as if you have big questions about the process of the overview, there's a link to the forums in the blog. That's the best place to go and ask those questions. As before, if you have any shipping issues, with parts that got to you, damaged, broken, whatever, email firstchoice@indymark.com. If you have issues on the webpage, you can email firstchoice@indymark.com. That all goes to my team to try to help take care of you as quickly as possible and fix the issues.
Yeah, this is kind of a weird question for them. So that's what those. Oh, I have a weird question actually. Kind of a nerd.
I think we've lost Francis.
Uh-oh. All right. Well, while
mic-
Francis sorts out the technical issues, we'll keep going here. The next slide is just some quick tips for teams from somebody who's done the priority list from a team perspective before. And so we'll talk about that real quick. Okay, so hot tips. Number one, make a priority list on first choice right now, even if it's not final. We mentioned before that if you miss the cutoff and you didn't have a priority list, poof, you don't get anything. There's no submit button on the priority list. It's just whatever's in there when the deadline comes. So get something in there now so that you get stuff, because it's free stuff. And then if you come back later and change around your items or add some things, then you can just tweak it. A really great thing for that is the new sort of pre-made lists options. And I believe, Jerry, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe if you already have items in there and you select one of the pre-made lists, it will supersede. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So it's not just going to add those items to your list. So if you had something already done up and you decide you would like what's in the example list, it's just going to replace what you had before with the example list. But those are really great if you don't have time, or if you're a student and your mentor hasn't done anything with it yet. Tell them to go on real quick and click the rookie button or the pneumatics button or something and just get something in there. And then the second sort of suggestion is to pick items that you'd be happy to get, right? I see a lot of people, a lot of students or teams will look at the list and be like, hey, that looks cool and it's free, and hey, that looks cool and it's free, and wow, look at the value per credit on this one. And you end up with a whole bunch of things that, it's cool stuff, but especially since it's before the season right now, you don't necessarily know if you're going to use. So my recommendation is fill up the top of your priority list with items that it doesn't matter what you get or how many you get. It's just going to be good stuff, and you're going to be happy to have it. Things like motors, or if you're building another robot, or you're a veteran team and you need your control system for this year, good news, you can get control system parts on there. Pneumatics are a good thing, and then tools. I think there's even a tools list pre-made up, but there's a Fluke digital multimeter on there. Guess what? Every team needs a multimeter to pass inspection. So if you don't have a good multimeter, you can get a multimeter. All of that's good stuff to have around. So those are some quick tips on just an easy way to make sure that you get the most out of first choice. And obviously you can go and do a lot of advanced stuff with it if you want to really get into the nitty-gritty of optimizing your list. But at the very basic level, get stuff that you want to have for your team. So moving on then, I think Kate's going to talk a little bit about the virtual kit of parts that we mentioned earlier.
Yeah, this will be cool.
Hey, Francis, welcome back. So the virtual kit of parts is, like I was saying earlier, it's anytime that a donor wants to contribute, but they're not going to be shipping us inventory, either because there is no inventory to ship, like software, or because they don't want to make a decision for the team. They want to give a dollar voucher and let the team pick for themselves, or it's just more convenient for them to ship themselves. And so those are all examples of vouchers. And there are there's one voucher live already for some teams. And so when did we do that? Maybe a month and a half ago. We published a blog about the drive base opt out, and this was kind of a feature that we added a couple of years ago that invited teams who pretty much knew they weren't going to use the drive base because they already had plans for a drive base, or they kind of really appreciate the opportunity to make their own, to opt out of getting the drive base kit with their kickoff kit and instead get an Andy Mark voucher, which is a $450 voucher. And so that went live last Monday.
The 21st.
The 21st, thank you. So, and that's in your team's registration account. Any mentor can see that voucher code, and that is. I've had a couple questions from teams because it's confusing, because First Choice and the Andy Mark voucher seem completely related. I actually think of them as completely separate. So the voucher you use when you're just purchasing parts on Andy Mark with your own dollars, you can apply that voucher code. Where First Choice is, you're using credits in that First Choice system, which we consider completely separate. And so the slide talks about some examples from the 2016 season. We offered motor controller vouchers because we didn't want to be in the position of deciding for teams whether they wanted the PWM controllers or the Victors, or whether they were a team that were more likely to use the CAN capability of the Talon. So kind of letting teams decide for themselves was something that we went with in 2016. DigiKey had a voucher that was a cash voucher, so you could go to the DigiKey site and order so much and apply a voucher code that would discount your order. And then in previous years, we had 3D printing, so you could upload a file to somebody, to a company that was donating a 3D printing voucher, and they would print off that part for you, or several parts for you, and send those to you in the mail in case you didn't have 3D printing capability. So it's great because it allows us to be pretty flexible in what we accommodate. The challenge is the complexity of trying to describe all of these things and kind of helping teams understand how they might be valuable to them. Cool.
All right. Well, thank you so much for telling us about all that stuff. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it. Oh, here we go. One more thing about how to find the voucher codes.
We got one last slide here. It's really quick. To find these voucher codes, and I believe your First Choice access password for your team is also here. One of your mentors can go onto your team dashboard. You just go to firstinspires.org and click firstinspires.com and click the login button. And then you log in for your team, and it's right here on your dashboard, access vouchers, and you can get to it that way. So as the more vouchers come in, they'll show up there.
And those voucher codes are also just at the bottom of this screen. So if you were violently opposed to clicking on a button, you could also just scroll, and they're going to be down there at the bottom of the screen.
No button pressing for me. No
way. If your button breaks, you can still get your passwords.
Excellent. Very cool. All right. Well, I think that brings us to the end of our presentation, unless I'm mistaken again. Nope, we're good. All right, cool.
Go
ahead, Kate. Plenty to talk about.
Two more things that I just wanted to mention before we get to the Q&A.
Totally.
And one is we were talking about how many credits teams had for round one, and it was 750 credits were issued to each team. However, part of the flexibility that we have now is we blogged about offering an extra game piece set to international teams. And so if an international team had opted in for that, they will get an extra set of game pieces at kickoff. However, we'll deduct 20% of their First Choice credits from their account. So if you're a non-US team and you're in First Choice and you're saying, I'm supposed to have 750 credits and I only see 600, that might be a reason. And if you want to email frcparts@usfirst.org, we can confirm or validate that and get back to you. But that might, just to clarify any confusion that might come from that. And it's steep, and we know it's steep, but we also think that it's pretty exciting to get an extra set of game pieces at kickoff. Can
I add real quick?
Yeah.
So if you're wondering about that, if you click on My Credits on the website, or you go to your account and go to My Credits, you'll actually see a line item that says that's what that 150 or 20% was used for. Perfect. So you should see it there too. If you don't see it there and you don't have 750 credits, then get a hold of them.
Yeah. And that's actually, so I said I had 2 things. This is going to be part 1B. And I'm not ready for 2 yet, but Jerry was talking about all the ways that you can get in touch with Andy Mark if you have questions or you're confused or something's not working like you expect. They may forward you to us, or if you email us, we may forward you to them because it's this joint venture. Sometimes Jerry and Liz and the rest of the team at Andy Mark are the ones who are going to know the answer, and sometimes the Kit of Parts team will know the answer. And so sometimes it might take a little while to get an answer if you email Jerry, and I'm the one that really needs to answer that. But I also wanted to elaborate that any sort of kind of frustration you're having about rules, or, it's 12:01 and can I submit? First is going to be the heavy on that. Andy Mark is doing the work for us. They're not the ones that make up the rules. We are. So if you're frustrated about any of that stuff, that's on us. It's not Jerry. And then my part 2 is I'm really honored and happy to be here with you guys today, but I feel like I definitely need to make sure everybody's aware that there's a team of people back at First that kind of make that side of things happen. We've got our team advocate, Jamie Luce, who has a breadth and depth of team experience that really helps her with that team advocate job. And then John Bryant, our Kit of Parts engineer. So the 2 of them, the 3 of us kind of split up first choice vouchers and kickoff kits and trade off as much as we can and cross train, but it's definitely a joint effort. So I just wanted to make sure that got out there.
Cool. Well, that's awesome. And I know JB and Jamie, and they're great people, and they do a great job with all that fun stuff that you guys do at First. So great for you to shout them out. All right. So anything else for real this time? Okay, cool. So we're going to go to the Q&A portion of the show for real. So if you have a question for us, submit it by typing !Q in the Twitch chat. It'll go to our bot and we'll read it. And if we like it, we'll put it right on air. Or if you're more of a Twitter fan, just tweet with hashtag FRCBTL, and we'll get that as well, and we'll take a look and get it ready. All right, so we're going to get ready for our very first question of the night here. This question comes from somebody in the chat, and they asked, might be covered in a later slide, it wasn't, when is shipping calculated or due? Jared, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, so when we do shipping, as far as everything right now, when you put in a credit card, what we do is we authorize credit cards, and all that means is that we have access to be able to charge up to that amount. It's very, very rare that we charge up to that amount. The reason the values are set is because of faraway distances for some of the places that are there. I believe it's $75 for FedEx Ground. If we ship FedEx Ground to Hawaii, that might actually be $90. So then we have to contact them and see about getting a little bit more to cover that. We actually usually, just for inside, if you ever do move to Hawaii, we'll do USPS because they're cheaper. But so that's the reason why we have that authorization is a little bit high. It's very rare it's actually that high. Once we do the priority list and we really know what everybody's parts are, we actually do the same thing that a website does, is we get all the weights of all those parts with all the quantities, and we take that entire weight, we send it to FedEx and say, hey, we're shipping from this location to this location, what's the price? And they tell us the price, and that's where the price comes from. So once we get that calculation, that's what the confirmation email that says, here is the list of parts that you get, that will have the actual shipping cost for your shipment. Whereas the first one you'll get that is, here's your priority list, before we run the process, that one will just have the authorization. The one after we do the process is what your actual shipment cost is.
Cool. And before Evan reads the next question, a follow-up to that, someone in the chat just also asked, how do you ship ground to Hawaii?
Well, it's kind of fun. You have a guy that just walks on water.
Oh, wow. I shouldn't say that. All right, Evan, take it away.
FedEx does it somehow. I haven't asked. I stay away.
All right. Our next question coming up right now is the open shopping done with leftover credits, or can we use real money for it? So this is the sort of live shopping period after the priority lists have been determined.
I can take that one too. It's actually a pretty common email that we get to firstchoice at andymark.com. After the fact, well, we've already used all of our credits. We really just want one more of these. These are all parts that are owned by First that are not for sale by AndyMark. So you can contact First and maybe they'll give them to you. I'm guessing that they go to the next year, right, Kate? So there is no way to actually buy them outright. What we've tried to done in the past is there's links, there's part numbers, some way of a link to get you to the place to buy them. Part numbers are usually the best thing to use, just to go to Google search and try to find them. And then you can find them from the actual vendors, so you can buy it directly from them, not through First Choice.
I can get you a great deal on throttle motors.
Yeah.
I could do that too. I have about 15 of them sitting in a drawer in my shop. We're getting ready. I almost used one last year, I swear.
We actually, First actually doesn't want to sell parts. I think that a lot of people think it would be a no-brainer for First to make some revenue off of those parts, but there's a lot of complexity that comes in with IRS and tax status and unrelated business income expense that's not my expertise at all. But as soon as we start selling parts and getting revenue for them, that's a whole other tax headache that we have to deal with. So those parts are donated to First, or we buy them. Some of them we do buy, but those are parts that we can make available to teams as part of the registration fee. And then, like Jerry said, we try really hard to put that link up there that says, if you need more, here's where to get them. But that's not always possible either, because sometimes donors come to us with a lot of stuff they're just trying to scrap, but it's junk to them, but it wouldn't be junk to some teams. And so they will take it and we'll make it available, but they're just not going to be for sale.
Yeah, I remember one of the benefits of living in Manchester is that when I went to First headquarters and saw the rear dock, there was this pallet 4 feet high, just full of like window motors that at one point were given out to all the teams. So I was like, wow, that's where they come from. This big pallet, cool. All right, let's go on to another question here coming up before us on the screen. What happens to my credits if I don't use them all in round 1? Do they carry over into round 2? Liz, do you want to answer this one?
Sure. So the credits, they do carry over, but I think it's important. I think we talked about this a little bit earlier. Make sure that you're taking a good look at the parts on your round 1 that are available to you, because a lot of those parts are really good and great to have and may not be available in round 2. So it's kind of a risky thing to wait and see if these parts are going to be left over for you in round 2 and kind of save all your credits till later. I definitely recommend putting together a good list for round 1 and then taking advantage of round 2 when it comes around as well. But try to use most of your credits and take advantage of all the credits that you get in both rounds.
Cool. Alrighty, Evan, do you want to read the next question?
Yeah, next question we have is, do I have to spend the entire balance of the AndyMark PDV all at once? So this is the voucher that you get if you opted out of your kit. And bear with us, it's not on the screen right now, but if you opted out of the kit bot, then you got, I think it's $450 voucher to use at AndyMark.
That's right, and I do a lot of work with the AndyMark product donation voucher, which is one example of a voucher that's part of the virtual kit. And you don't have to spend all your entire balances at once. We at AndyMark use it like a gift certificate, so you can continue to use it on multiple purchases if you need to, and the balance will carry over on your remaining purchases. We actually put together a more detailed document this year on exactly how to use that process, and that's available at andymark.com/pdv. Pretty easy to find, with some more details on how to use that on your purchase. So definitely take advantage of that if you did opt into the PDV, and those are available to use now. So if you want to stock up on parts to get ready for the season, I recommend putting it in order sooner rather than later.
So I could buy stuff now and have it ready, like have it shipped to me before Christmas even.
That's right, Francis.
So I could do
as long as
Christmas shopping on Andy Mark with my PDV.
You could, yes.
That would be a
That's
bad thing. Don't do that.
Your team may not be very happy
Well,
with you.
I mean, you could buy Christmas presents for your team, right? Like you could buy safety glasses on Andy Mark, right? So you could buy everybody safety glasses for Christmas or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, that's a good thought. I'm gonna write that down so I don't forget. Anyway, we'll go on to our next question here. We're gonna try to put it up on screen. We think it got it working. All right, cool. So this is a good one. How many items should I have on my priority list? Jerry, it sounded like the way you described it, the best way to get optimum stuff is just to put every single item on there. Is that something that we should do or what?
Well, I kind of would go with the thought, like, if you don't want something, don't add it to your list. I mean, if you really don't need I'm not going to call out any of the parts out here. But if there's
if your team color is red, don't get the green or the blue shaft collars. You're not going to use them.
But if you want to get purple and send them to Liz, she would love you for it.
Yeah.
Anything purple is fine.
Yes.
But yeah, so exactly that. Like if it's something that's useful to you, add it to your list. Just keep adding to the bottom of your list everything that's possibly useful. Once you get done with your list, if you see something else that's useful or a duplicate of the same thing that doesn't have a max quantity, you can add it to the list. I mean, the other opportunity you have is if you really didn't want to, you could save those credits for round 2 since they do roll over. But I mean, it kind of proves to grab the leftover of something that's good if you end up getting to the bottom of the list, is in my opinion.
Yeah, and one thing I think to emphasize is that you can put more than 750 credits on that priority list. So just to re-emphasize that, you can put, 1 million credits up on your priority list, and you're only going to get 750 credits worth of parts in total at the end. But if those parts sell out before it gets to your that line item on your list, you're going to at least end up with some of the parts on your list.
I'll donate $20 to the person with the highest credits on their list.
Oh, challenge thrown down.
Oh, you use the most of them?
Yep. Whoever has the most credits on their priority list, I'll totally do it.
Well, I don't want to be that guy, but isn't everything in multiples of 5?
For credits?
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff that's more than that.
Well, but it's like it ends in a 5 or a 0, right? So I could just
zeros or 5s.
All right, so I'm gonna load up on shaft collars then. Purple ones for Liz.
Yes.
I actually believe it does say when you go to make your priority list at the top, it's got a little warning there that says they recommend you have at least twice as many credits on your list as you have credits available. And it'll tell you. It's great. It's got so whoever programmed that website, Jerry gave him a shout out earlier.
Charles.
It tells you when you have enough credits, and then after that you just keep going if you want $20 from Jerry.
Right. At the
so
like this many credits and how many unique items. So it even tells you how many unique items versus how many credits. So yeah, go by all means, highest credits. I'll donate $20 to the shipping cost.
Sweet. Heard it here first. All right. Well, the last question we have tonight is kind of a fun one. What's everybody's favorite part ever in the kit of parts? And this could go back a long way. I'll start out. My personal favorite, I miss the globe motors. And so those used to come in the kit, and they're these great little motors that you could kind of do everything with.
Yeah.
So I guess, Liz, we'll start with you. Go to Jerry, go to Kate, end with Francis, and yeah.
So I'm pretty sure I said globe motors 2 years ago on this show.
I think you might be
I
right.
think still that, but that's fine. I'll think of a different one. So one of the things that I think maybe it was in the kit last year or the year before, my team really liked they were like grippy nub materials, and they were just really neat to have, and they ended up all over different parts of our robot. They just appeared everywhere. So everywhere I would look were these sticky back grippy nub pieces, like all throughout the shop. So I told my team, I was like, no, like we need those for useful things. You can't just stick them everywhere. That's another thing that brought my team joy out of the kit.
Cool. Jerry, how about you?
I'll take the commercial shot. The AM143, of course.
The
There
kit
we go.
chassis is good. I will admit.
Yep. Kate, you never did first as a participant, but you've made a whole bunch of kit parts up. What was your favorite part to include in them?
I think that's kind of like asking who's your favorite kid.
We all have a favorite. I'm just putting it. Come on. But
It's Francis. Yeah.
it may be only for a little while. They may change, but there's gonna be a favorite.
I think the funniest, most interesting thing we ever put in the kit was several years ago. You probably remember the really big cable ties from Burndy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Those were something that we took the donation. We said we'll put them in there. We'll see what happens, and people had a ton of fun with them, and it was hilarious. And they still pop up. People still have them, and it's just kind of one of those things that it went from one end of the spectrum of really to like, oh my gosh, this was pretty popular. So that was a fun one.
Isn't that the same zip tie that was in Bad Lip Reading? With
Yeah.
Matt going around Derek? Okay.
Yes.
Checking.
That's a good one. So I'm going to go retro here, and I think Evan already knows what it is based on that. Even more retro than me. So I'm on Team 190. We've been around for a very long time, so we have a lot of old junk in the lab, and I've been the lab manager. And so we have yet to throw away this thing. It's called the Belimo torque motor. It is this orange. I mean, if you Google it, it's like the second link. You'll find it. It's this orange cube that is basically the most badass servo you've ever seen in your life that only goes about 50 degrees. And so every year for our technical test on Team 190, we put this torque motor on the table and say, hey, kids, point to motors. And so every year somebody inevitably picks up the Belimo torque motor and says, this is a motor that we use to power the robot. And it's great. It's a great way to troll the kids. We mean that in the best way possible. I think, are we going to get it on screen? Is that what's happening? Or okay, we're putting it up on screen right now. Our lovely director is going to show it really quick for the viewing audience in all of its glory and all its horror. Maybe in a second. Almost there. Here we go. Yes, that's a pretty good approximation of it. If you can imagine all the things that you could do with that on your robot, such as rotate a flag, maybe, or spin a top. I don't know. It's not that good, but it is funny. So it makes this lovely grinding sound as it turns. All right. Well, with that out of the way, and my talk on the Belimo torque motor, we're going to end the show for the evening. I want to thank all of our guests, Liz, Jerry, Kate. Thank you so much for taking time out of your evening to come and share all this information with us and with the rest of the FIRST community.
No problem.
Thank you.
Cool.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. We love having you guys on. So for those of you watching live, this is going to be on YouTube in just a few minutes. We encourage you to share this with as many folks as you can, especially the folks that maybe haven't done first choice before, the rookies, all those kind of guys. This information can really go a long way to help making their season better. Also, the presentation we have is going to get uploaded onto the FIRST website. So if you go to if you go to firstinspires.org, you'll look for the Behind the Lines page. That's under FRC Resources, and you can find the presentation there. We're going to be back in 2 weeks with the next episode of Behind the Lines. We're going to be talking about how to design a robot for controllability and how to bring sort of the controls of the robot into the mechanical design and how to utilize those controls to the best of your ability. But with that, for Evan and for the rest of the crew, I want to say thank you and good night to everybody, and hope you have a lovely week. See you in a few weeks. Bye-bye.